Yo, what is up, everybody? I want to welcome you guys back to my YouTube channel, Tall Guy and a Hemi. If you can, smash that like button, hit that subscribe button. Let's get into it. So as you can tell by the title of this video, this is arguably, in my opinion, one of the easiest ways to do a Hellcat swap. Now, it can't be stock. At least the intake manifold has to be swapped out. Sorry, I got the dogs in here, but at least the intake manifold has to be swapped out. But yeah, let's just get right to it. So just a quick backstory on this car. If you're new and haven't been following along the channel, I've had 3 different motors in this. It's been a 5.7, a 6.4, and now a 6.2, all Gen 3 Hemis. And this video is mainly for the 8-speed cars. I'm not too sure about the 5-speed cars, but the HP 70 cars, this is mainly for you guys. So when I had my 5.7 in this, I ended up floating a valve in it, and I put a 6.4 in it. But when I put the 6.4 in it, I had to use a 6.4 converter, because the 5.7 converter, it wouldn't not bolt, but like the little end piece on the converter that goes into the crankshaft hub in the rear, it was too big, and the 6.4 one was smaller, so I had to use a 6.4 converter, to bolt to the back of the crank hub. Sorry, I had a little hard time getting that out. My dog just headbutted the door, literally just headbutted the door. And I tried so hard not to laugh and just keep my composure. So I'll show you guys what I'm talking about on this 6.4 that I got right here. This is the crank hub, the hole I'm talking about. This is smaller than the 5.7 converter. So you'll have to swap out to at least a 6.4 converter, because I believe the 6.4 and 6.2 crank hubs in the rear are the same like diameter for the hole. But I no longer have a stock converter in this car. I have a Circle D 4K stall, and I'm running a Hayes. It's a heavy duty flex plate, but I guess it's lightweight. It's for a lot of torque and stuff, so it's really good material. And you can use OEM parts. You can use a 6.4 converter or a 6.4 flex plate, sorry. Or you can use a 6.2. I don't know if obviously the HP90s are different, but you can't use the HP90 converter, but you can at least use a 6.4 converter and flex plate. So I don't have a supercharger on this car. I'm using a high ram instead, obviously, for the turbo, and I'll show you guys the turbo here in a second. And this right here made the swap a whole lot easier, where I didn't have to use any of the supercharger stuff. As for like the coolant lines for the supercharger, or any of the smooth boost that some of you guys run, I believe like 5.7 guys who put it on there, and just little stuff like that, like the adapter plates or any of that, I didn't need any of that stuff. And I had the option to run 6.2 heads, but I decided to run my BGE 6.4 heads, because they already had the springs and stuff assembled. And I also didn't want to get the adapter plates for the high ram that you needed for the 6.2 heads, because I already had the 1-inch spacer right here, and I didn't want like any higher off the head or whatever. But if you were to keep 6.2 heads, just keep in mind, if you wanted to run the high ram or maybe some type of intake manifold, you'll need the adapter plates. As for the 6.4 and 6.2 heads, they had the same bolt pattern, same valves, same bore. And I was able to use the OEM head gaskets when I put the heads on. There's nothing's hitting, piston to valve clearance is good. It seals up just fine, so I mean, it's all good there. And for the head bolts, some of you are probably wondering, I'm just using 6.4 head bolts for right now, because I think those are good for like 20 to 22 pounds of boost. I'm not going to be seeing that at first, but while I have the motor off, I'm thinking about just going ahead and studding it while I already have it apart. Just buy once, cry once. But if you wanted to use 6.4 head bolts, or even 6.2 head bolts, they'll work just fine. I apologize, it's a mess in here. But like for the ignition and interior wise, everything is stock from my 5.7, like 5.7 ignition, interior, dash, steering wheel, pedal. All this stuff is like stock 5.7. I just got a couple gauges right there. I'm not running any of the red keys. Just got my stock key, like I mentioned. Which in my opinion is really nice, because I don't have to worry about programming that stuff, or I don't know how like the regular swaps do it. If you guys do like all the power on one key, or you switch the keys like the black key and the red key, I'm not too sure how you guys do that, but on this one you just get all the power with one key, obviously, which is nice. And for my PCM setup, I'm still running, it's not a 5.7 PCM, but this is the same PCM, unlocked PCM from when I had my 5.7. I'm getting tuned by Dave Katz at EFI Specialties. He handles all the tuning side of this stuff. He's really, really good at what he does. He has like 20 plus years of experience. So I trust him. And before I do anything, like I'll always run it by him. If he's able to tune it, just give him the mod list and what the plans are and all this good stuff. So, I mean, he's pretty much able to do anything, which is really nice and convenient. But I also want to point out too that I'm still on a 6.4 wiring harness. I didn't have to use the Hellcat wiring harness or the trans wiring harness since I'm still using the HP 70 transmission for right now. I know this is not going to make a lot of power on this transmission, and I'm getting the HP 90. It's coming. Just I got to get the fuel system first. But yeah, still on the stock 6.4 wiring harness here. Nothing too crazy because I'm not using any of the Hellcat sensors like for the supercharger or the timing cover area. And that's the next thing that I'll cover while I'm right here is the timing cover. It's 6.4 timing cover or 6.457 timing cover with the same 6.457 water pump, all the accessories and stuff. It bolted right to the 6.2 block because it's a Gen 3 block. As long as it's a Gen 3, it'll bolt to each other or whatever. And then next up, down here at the crankshaft, this is a little tricky, and I'm going to explain it how I did this. And I got some help from my buddy of mine, Mac Built, on Instagram. He kind of walked me through how to install this safely and properly. If you were to go this route that I'm doing or whatever, you can use the stock 6.4 harmonic balancer. I'm running a 15% underdrive. Just for the turbo, I wanted to spin my accessories less and try to make a little bit more power, which it's not going to be much, but I already had it apart, so why not? So when you install it, you want to heat it up really good with some NICs, lubricant, and all that good stuff. But for the crank bolt, the 6.4 and 6.2 crank bolts are different in diameter, like thread size or whatever. So I had to get a 6.2 crankshaft bolt, and I had to trim the washer, and I'll show you guys with a spare bolt that I have what I mean by trim the washer. And then I added another washer that fit perfectly in diameter through the 15% underdrive, because it's a little bit tricky. And then I put a black RTV in between the washers and the bolt and crank, because sometimes oil will come out of there. So it's all good and sealed up, but I'll show you guys what I'm talking about. So here's an extra 6.4 crank bolt that I had laying around. The Hellcat one is definitely much bigger in diameter and thread size, but for this washer right here that separates like this here, it was too big for the 15% underdrive, so I had to just cut the edges around it and then take I don't remember what it's called. It's obviously a grinder, but smoothing everything out as best I could. And I put a smaller washer in front of this one, like right here, and then put black RTV around this, in between this, and in front of the new washer that I got on here. And so that brings me back to this timing cover before I forget. I'm running a 6.4 oil pan and 6.4 gasket. I didn't use the 6.2 oil pan because I didn't use the 6.2 timing cover. The 5.7 and 6.4 timing cover won't bolt up to the 6.2 oil pan, I don't believe, because the bottom mounting bolts are different. So just keep that in mind. You'll have to use a 6.4, 5.7 oil pan, and at least a 6.4 gasket. You cannot use a 5.7 gasket because it will not clear. When the crank goes down, it'll keep tapping it. Last thing about the timing cover area, if you're going to do any type of underdrive or aftermarket harmonic balancer or pulley, you'll have to use an OEM crank seal in the timing cover, because I had a Felpro in here, and Mac Built did tell me that at least 80% of them will leak oil, and not even 20 miles. Mine was already leaking, so I had to pull all this shit back off and put an OEM one in, which it's just my fault. I'm super impatient. I thought that I could be part of that 20% that could get by with it, and no, I wasn't. And for my knock sensors, I went ahead and just used 6.4 knock sensors on each side, and I'm running a 6.2 crankshaft sensor because on the 6.4 harness, it plugged right in, same as the knock sensors. And as a lot of you may know, you're going to need a different map sensor when you run boost. I believe it goes 2.25 bar or like 2.5 bar or something like that, and then 3 bar. I'm running a 3 bar map sensor. You can also bump it up to a SRT4 map sensor, and I think that's good for like 30 PSI or 30 plus PSI boost. But this 3 bar map sensor, it's like low to mid 20s, and I won't see that. Not for a long time at least, so I'm fine with the 3 bar. And for the fuel setup, I already had an aftermarket fuel pump. It's a DW400 fuel pump, an OEM Hellcat injector, so I was able to just keep the stock fuel lines that I had. They were 3/8, but my fuel pump ended up going out within like 50 miles on this build. It shit itself bad. It was picking up really like gunky stuff from the bottom. I don't know where it came from in the tank or whatever, but it was filthy. and the fuel pressure was bouncing around like crazy, like it would fire. I mean, it wouldn't even reach, I think 58 psi or whatever it calls for. It was hanging out like low 40s, like it was bad. And when you do this swap, you can leave your 5.7 or 6.4 cooling system, whatever you have going on. I just put a dual fan and a Hellcat radiator in here while I could, just for better cooling. And my 5.7 stuff, I was still running my 5.7 stuff when I had the 6.4 stuff, motor and stuff in here, and that had well over 100,000 miles on it. And that's the same with this transmission. This transmission has over 100,000 miles on it. Fluid's been changed regularly, but it's got a 4K stall with like 800 miles on it. And I know the transmission's gonna go out and it's not gonna make a whole lot of power. Like, I'm well aware. It's just I'm waiting on this fuel system so I can get this installed, drive it around a little bit and see what it does. But I'm 100% getting an HP90 transmission. But other than that, man, I can't really think of anything else that really went into the swap. It was really just dropping the motor in this thing and changing out a few parts, like for the supercharger wise. But other than that, this thing dropped right in. I had no issues mounting this thing up to the transmission or the converter or the flex plate, any of that stuff, which was really, really nice. So yeah, I'm super excited to see what this thing's gonna do. I've never seen a Hellcat swapped RT with a turbo on it. It's pretty sweet in my opinion. But I think a lot of people on my reels and shit, or YouTube reels, whatever they call them, or shorts, YouTube shorts, I think everybody's mistaken that they think this car is a Hellcat, or I'm claiming it's a Hellcat. This car is not a Hellcat whatsoever. The VIN comes back as a RT. It's originally a 5.7. I'm not claiming it to be a Hellcat. The motor is, well, like, it's a Hellcat motor. You can't deny that it's a Hellcat motor. I can even show you guys the damn pistons here for the OEM pistons. You guys can look up that part number if you'd like. But I'm running stock pistons and rods in this. The rings have been gapped for a lot of boost, and the bottom end's been studded. So that's why I was thinking just stud the top end while I got it apart. But I'm anxious to see what this thing does once it's all said and done. It's gonna be really, really sweet. But before I forget, I wanna show you guys the turbo that I got on it. It's a 78 millimeter. It's really nice here. It's kind of dark, I don't know if you can see it, but it's really simple how I got it set up. It's just like if you were to run a supercharger or whatever, you could run a full exhaust out the back of the car like you normally would. But I got it coming out of both headers and a connecting pipe up to the back end of the turbo. And the exhaust just comes out like you just seen it, just coming out of the back of the turbo right there. Or you can run it out of the fender or take it back down and out of the back of the car. And there's a lot of things you can do. And I wanted to be different with this swap. I didn't want to just throw a stock Hellcat motor in this. Like, oh, it's a Hellcat swap, because there's thousands of people who've done that. Everybody likes to be original. There's nobody likes to put their own. I mean, there are people, don't get me wrong. There's very few people that do really good work and like take it to the next level. So shout out to those guys and keep doing what y'all are doing. But most people, they'll just throw stock shit in here and just claim it's whatever. But I mean, to me, that's boring. And I don't like to be boring. But anyways, with that being said, I really do appreciate you guys stopping by and checking out this video. If you have any questions on the swap or whatever, feel free to DM me on Instagram or just drop a comment below. I'll do my best to answer you guys if you have whatever question you got, if I left something out. So yeah, I really appreciate you guys stopping by and checking out this video. If you can, smash that like button, hit that subscribe button. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.